Hello, diligent students of fashion. How about we do something really basic today? Today, I want to show you how to make the amazing Yoruba Iro and Buba. The Iro and Buba has evolved over the years and people have done different things with it, embellish it, change the length of the sleeve and all. But then, the Yoruba Iro and Buba still remain a viable outfit for an Owambe party. So today I'll show you how to make it. I know for most of you this is not really a creative challenge, but it's good to know how to make this. So there are some things you just need to note. For instance, you need to understand, when you want to cut the wrapper, the standard measurement for cutting the wrapper is like 2 yards, that is 36 inches in 2 places, plus 11 inches for most people. But these days, with our young people who don't like too much volume, they are making it smaller and then they are adding rope to it. And then if you have somebody who is on the big side, they might want something a little bit longer than that. So if your customer doesn't give you specific request, just go with the standard. Then the buba itself, we have to understand that, basically the Yoruba buba is just a kimono. The only difference is that, instead of cutting the sleeve with it, we cut it separately and add to it. But the measurement for the body of the buba itself also encompasses part of the sleeve. So the joining doesn't fall exactly on the shoulder line. There are some basic measurements you need to make a buba. You need the length of the buba, and there's a lot of things that is dependent on your client's request. People want their buba in different ways. Some people want long sleeve, some people want very short one that won't even get to the elbow. Some people want their buba to be long, to get all the way to their hip line. Some people just want it just below, like the below the abdomen. So it depends on what your clients request. But if they don't have a specific request, maybe this person is making a buba for the first time, you have to determine what length you want it to be. So ideally it should be somewhere on the upper hip. So measure the length of the buba that you want to make. Then the width should be loose. It's not a fitted top, although some clients will tell you that they don't want it too free. So for the width of the body, you can decide to add between 5 to 10 inches, depending on the size of the person, depending on their bust, and then depending on how big or how loose they want the buba to be. So what's next? The neckline. The neckline is also dependent on the client. People have different choices. Some people, they don't want it to be too free, especially if somebody is really slender. They don't want it falling off their shoulder. While some people, they want it to look like off shoulder. So they want their neckline to be big. So the point is, get what your client wants. Finally, the sleeve. Now, the sleeve can be of any length, but one thing you must never forget is that when you cut the bodies, part of the length of the sleeve has been added to the body. So you must take this into consideration when you want to cut your sleeve length. Otherwise, you're going to make a mistake. For instance, if you measured your customer's sleeve, maybe you measure from the shoulder and maybe she wants it to be at the elbow or the wrist, wherever, because people have different choices. Some want it to be at their wrist, some just above the wrist. So when you take the measurements, remember that we've added a little bit excess to the body, because this joining is falling beyond the shoulder line. So you can mark where the shoulder line stops, check the excess you have added to it, then you're going to add that excess to your sleeve length. For instance, if your customer wants a 10-inch sleeve, you've measured it, 10 is step from the shoulder to the elbow where she wants the length of the buba to be is 10 inches. So, and you have added extra 4 inches to the body. That means you're going to take that 4 inches from the 10 inches and your sleeve will now be 6 inches. All right, then I've spoken about the neckline. Now let's get to work. Let's cut our buba. I've cut out the wrapper from the main fabric, and the remaining fabric is what is on the table. So I'm folding it. I've already folded it into 2, and this edge where we have the lace, don't forget this must show on the sleeve. When you are sewing lace, it is really important that this show on the leaf. Some clients want it on the hem of their buba. If they want it to, may have to cut extra from somewhere else and add it to it. But if they are tying the wrapper on top of it, it's not really necessary. So I folded the remaining fabric into 2 using the length of my buba to fold it. Just watch the way I folded it. I folded it lengthwise so that on both sides I have the lace edges. Then I'm going to fold it into 2 again, making 4 fold like that. Okay, now I'm going to cut out the main body using the measurements I've already decided on. Okay, so how wide, how big do you want your buba to be? So for instance, if I've decided it's going to be 40 inches, that means I'm going to be measuring 10 inches. So I'm just taking that measurement all the way down to make sure it's straight, and then I will cut it out. So here I have the body of the buba, and for most people, when you cut out the body, the remaining fabric on the other side will be enough for the sleeve. For most people, especially if they don't want a very long sleeve. Okay, so the next thing is to cut the neckline. Decide on what the depth of the neckline is. I'm using 3 inches for this one, so I'm just doing it like the normal way I'll cut a circle. I'm just marking it out. I'm cutting 3 inches. I actually made the neckline a little bit smaller than I needed because this is lace fabric and it has a tendency of spreading more than you want it to. So here we'll have the body of the buba. If it's Ankara fabric, you can notch the shoulder, but I'm very careful about notching lace because it will just spread it further and create unnecessary hole. So we're going to put this on one side. Okay, I think I was just explaining that. Okay, that's where the shoulder ends, and that extra is part of the sleeve. So I'm adding it to the length of the sleeve. I've explained it before, but let me just go over it again. So like I have like 4 inches extra after the shoulder, and I want to cut I can't remember the length of the sleeve I used. I think it was like 12 inches. So I removed that 4 inches from the 12 inches the length of the sleeve is supposed to be, and then I cut it out. And remember, I'm folding the 2 sleeves together. I'm cutting it together. The width of the sleeve is also dependent on your customers, but you don't want to make it too narrow. This is not a blouse, it's a buba, so it has to be free. So something between 10 to 12 inches. 12 might be too much. Just fold it, make sure it's not too big. If your client doesn't have exceptionally big arms, I think between 10 to 11 inches is okay, so that by the time you are done sewing, you have like a 9.5 to 10.5 inches for the width of your sleeve. Even for a slim person, the buba sleeve is usually a little bit big. So I'm just arranging it on the table so that you can see that it's actually a kimono. So the next thing we're going to do is to join the that side of the sleeve, and then let's just go to the sewing machine. I'll just show you quickly how to join it because that is also a little bit technical. Okay, so the first thing I did here was to stitch the Iro or the wrapper, and we're going to hem both sides of the wrapper. And one thing about this wrapper is that you're not just going to hem, like you can't decide that, okay, I'm just going to take a tiny piece to hem. I don't know why, but that hemming must be at least like 2 inches wide. So what I did was to fold like 2.5 inches in, then you use 1/2 inch to turn it and just stitch both sides. Then these days people also want to add belts to it, so you're just going to find a plain fabric, usually satin, doll face, whatever. You can use Mikado, but don't use something too hard. Some people use the actual fabric, but it's not, what's the beauty in that? Just use a plain fancy fabric, because, and then it also depends. Some people want a very long one, a very big one, so that they can use it as a design at the back of their wrapper. Whatever, just put it there. We're going to tie it to both sides of the wrapper. This will make it easy for people like us that don't really like tying wrapper. Okay, even with the rope, I really don't like it. But anyways, you attach it to both sides and then, you know, iron it, and the wrapper is done. Now let's stitch the buba itself. Like I said, is a little bit technical, so please pay attention. You just don't, you know, stitch it anyhow. Okay, so for the buba, you're going to, I've done one sleeve. Let me show you with the other sleeve how to do it. So you're going to fold your buba into 2, as in the main body, and find the shoulder point. Like I said earlier on, if it's Ankara, you can notch it before you leave your table, but I didn't notch it because it's lace. Then for the sleeve, I'm also going to find the midpoints. So that part, you know, that folded part, okay, I'm just going to match it up with that shoulder part of the buba. I hope I'm making sense. Just match it up like I'm doing, pin it at that point, and then just match it up until that's joining on the sleeve. Please just watch what I'm doing. It's hard to explain everything, but how you sew this part, especially this sleeve to the main bodies, will determine how the buba will stand. So okay, so I've traced it to the end. So where I have my seam allowance on the seam is where I'm going to start stitching. Exactly where it stops is where I will start stitching, and I'm using 1/2 inch seam allowance. Please, if you are the set of people who like using plenty seam allowance, you can't do that with buba. It's not going to hang well. So 1/2 inch seam allowance is okay. So I'll take it all the way down. Then I'm done. I've attached the sleeve like that. You can see, you know, the joining. So the next thing we're going to do is to join the sides, and if you attach your sleeve very well, the edges of the hem must match. Now we're going to measure like 4 inches up. Okay, just mark that point or pin it, whatever, and then from the top we're going to stitch up to that point. We're going to leave the down part open. It's like a slit on both sides of the buba. Now I will start stitching exactly at where the sleeve ends, and I will make sure that I did not mistakenly catch the sleeve in my stitch as I'm stitching the side, and I'm still using my 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, then, so we are done stitching both sides. The next thing is to hem. So we're going to start from our slits and just stitch it all the way around. So this time around we're just going to do our normal hemming, a rolled hem, and just stitch all the way around until you get to the end of the other side of the slit. And it's as simple as that. You are done. Okay, one last thing before you are finally done, the neckline. We'll finish the neckline with a bias. So you're just going to take your bias thread, a matching bias thread please, or bias tape, pardon me. So we're going to stitch it to the neckline. Also, again, I say be careful with this lace fabric, you know, because when you cut it, because of the holes, there is a tendency like it increases the neckline. So be careful that you are not spreading it unnecessarily. Watch out for where, you know, the thread are supposed to meet each other, and just attach your bias all the way round without unnecessarily increasing or disfiguring the neckline of the buba. If you are just doing it for the first time, I advise you use a more solid fabric, maybe like the African prints. It gives you less trouble. Okay, so here I'm done with my bias tape. At least I've attached one side. Don't be lazy and think you can just stitch the other side. No, you can't do that. That's not a neat job. We have to fold it in and stitch the other side so that it's not showing on the right side of the buba, and that's it.